All right, so we're about to start our session. We'll get started with Gilbert Zavala in just a moment, but we'll give folks maybe about 10 seconds just to kind of join the session. All right. All right, thanks everyone so much for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started, and Gilbert Zavala is going to kick off our session.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the second webinar in our series to elevate and strengthen the engagement of employers for the workforce mission of Texas community colleges. Our community colleges are essential for preparing the future of our skilled workforce in Texas and for supporting the upskilling of incumbent workforce needed for the long-term growth and prosperity of our state. I'm Gilbert Zavala with the Austin Chamber of Commerce. But before we get to our guests, I want to do several things. First, I'd like to provide some context about this series and why it's important for Texas today and in the future. Second, I'd like to share a little bit more about the importance of business leaders advancing skills in Texas. And finally, I'd like to cover a couple housekeeping details related to the webinar. As the regions of Texas emerge from the pandemic and continue to transition to a more technology-based economy, we're confronting skills challenges and gaps that will need to be addressed through stronger alignment and engagement of employers, educators, community, and public leaders. It is clear that the accelerating pace of change will also require innovation, adaptability, and agility. As we navigate the changing nature of work in Texas, it is critically important for employers and business leaders to engage and partner with community colleges in new and innovative ways to ensure Texas has the skilled workforce it needs to compete in today's global economy. And that's why we're here today. We, along with our chamber partners from around the state, recruited business leaders across Texas in various industries who have partnered closely with community colleges and strengthened their talent pipelines for their companies and industries. They will be sharing how they've partnered with community colleges, the value they've received from those partnerships, and tips for other businesses and industries who want to develop successful partnerships with our community colleges. Before we begin, I also want to thank our key partners who have worked together to make this series possible: the Dallas Regional Chamber, the Greater Houston Partnership, the San Antonio Chamber, the Texas Association of Business, and the TAB Foundation. We're also pleased to have as partners the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Opportunity America, and Working Nation, who can elevate and amplify this work. The primary purpose of this series is to create and broaden a truly statewide business-led coalition of employers, chambers, business leaders together to champion the workforce mission of our community colleges and advance skills-based training and education across our state. So thank you to all our partners and stakeholders for your interest and support of this. In the coming weeks and months, we will share more information about the series, including topics and guests. However, I'm pleased to share that on May 3rd, we will be welcoming Dr. Harrison Keller, Texas Commissioner of Higher Education, whose leadership and focus has been instrumental as the state works to create a policy framework to develop a skilled and ready workforce. Recently, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board released its 2022 to 2030 strategic plan, Building a Talent-Strong Texas. It is clear from this plan that post-secondary education and skills development will be crucial to our long-term prosperity of our state and all its residents. We can only achieve this and goals in the plan when employers and industry leaders are working together in close partnership with our higher education institutions, but particularly our community colleges. And now for those housekeeping details. All attendees are currently muted and your radios are turned off for purposes of the webinar. However, if you have questions for our employers and moderators, you're able to post these to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. This tab will be moderated. Please do not post your questions in chat, as we won't be able to moderate those. So post them in the Q&A tab. The chat function should be used just to connect with our production team if you're having any technical challenges. I'd now like to introduce my colleague from the Austin Chamber, Quilan Teo, who leads our workforce development efforts in Austin. And Quilan will be introducing today's session and our guests.
Thank you, Gilbert. As a refresher, last month we hosted Tamar Jacoby, President and CEO of Opportunity America, to share insightful research her organization has been doing about the important role community colleges play in developing and growing a region's workforce. We also welcome Dr. Lonnie Howard, President of Lamar Institute of Technology, Dr. Christy Ponce, President of Temple College, and Dr. William Serrata, President of El Paso College. Each of them shared insights into how they work with the business community. Today's session now brings the employee voice into our discussion. We are fortunate to have employers who have strong relationships and partnerships with their local community colleges. We will have two different panels to focus in on two different yet important roles the community colleges can play. Our first panel will be moderated by Tamar Jacoby of Opportunity America. She is joining us from Poland, where she is reporting on the crisis in Eastern Europe and Ukraine. The focus of the panel will be on employers who are working closely with community colleges to upskill their existing workers or prepare entry-level workers through non-credit programs or shorter-term credentials. Our second panel will be moderated by Jane Oates, who is CEO of Working Nation, whose mission is to bring light the hard truths about the looming unemployment crisis and bring the country together to create and amplify solutions for a changing economy. The focus of Jane's panel will be employers who are partnering with community colleges and their credit programs to prepare entry-level employees with the technical skills and credentials employer require. Each moderator will introduce their guests. Welcome, Tamar. I'm sure we can spend the entire program getting your insights about what you're seeing in Eastern Europe. Perhaps we can add a session when you return. I'm now turning it over to you to moderate this panel. Tamar.
Thank you so much, Quilon. It's a pleasure, and thank you to the BLAST Coalition. It's a pleasure to be here. The panel that's coming is focused on what I consider community college's hidden asset, their non-credit continuing education divisions. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, I want to share some results of a national survey that my organization just did of community college educators as a way to frame our conversation about employer partnerships. So we did this national survey. We asked all the community and technical colleges in America to participate. About 40% of them did participate. So these are numbers that are quite nationally representative. We first asked the colleges, how many employer partners do you have? And what we came up with is this average number, 191. Obviously, that's an average, so it masks a lot of variety from just a handful to many more. But the challenge there is employer partnerships can mean so many different things. It can mean a casual relationship, fairly, well, just let's say casual, perhaps sitting on a policy advisory committee where you go to a meeting once or twice a year, all the way at the other end of the spectrum to a very intense relationship where the college and the company talk every day or every week, and the employer has a lot of input on the program and the instructor and what's happening to the students. And so we tried to use our survey to kind of get to the bottom of that a little bit, like how intense are these partnerships? So one question we asked, we thought might help us understand that is, do you offer work-based learning or not? We thought that might help us get, the ones that do offer work-based learning a little more intensive than the ones who, or maybe a lot more intensive than the ones who come to a meeting once a year. And what was interesting was about a third of employer partners do offer work-based learning. Now let's go to the next slide. But we also try to kind of parse it a little more finely. What other, is there a spectrum? Can we talk about that spectrum and divide it up in any way? And let's maybe leave the customized contract training, which is the definition at the bottom. That's a special kind of relationship where the company actually pays the college or uses state money, a grant, to pay the college to train usually incumbent workers. That's a particular, very special kind of relationship. But we tried to divide the rest into three categories of intensity. And so employer sponsors those, I mean, they're all important, right? None of these are to be thrown out the window or kicked out of bed. Employer sponsors are usually high profile companies that are driven more by a sense of corporate social responsibility than actual labor needs, that donate to the college and engage students, come do mentoring, maybe have work-based learning, but rarely hire out of the institution. The next level up, a little more intense, we call them employer advisors. Those are the ones that sit on those committees. And they might offer work-based learning. They might donate equipment. They might do all kinds of things. There's a range of activities, but they're not really depending on the college for their workers. So what they're doing, they have a little less stake in it, right? They don't care about the quality in the same way that you would care if you were actually hiring workers. And then the last, really for us, the most intense kind of relationship is employer partner. And those are companies that have a pressing need for the talent being trained and being prepared at the college. And they tend to get much more involved, right? Because they want to hire these people, and the people have to have the skills that the company needs. And so these employers tend to engage much more intensively. And, again, the whole spectrum is valuable. Even the advice about what's happening to the labor market, that's important for the college. But, for me, it's like anything, the more you put in, the more you're likely to get out for both sides of the partnership. And so, I'm most interested in the employer partners. And I think the companies that we're going to talk to today, the employers that we're going to talk to today are mostly or all employer partners. And, my goal, when I think about policy, the question is, how can policy push every company that's engaging to put a little more effort and intensity into it? So there's just a last slide. Let's look quickly. It has some numbers on it. These are a little misleading because, every college wants to brag about its employer partnership. And so I think these numbers are a little inflated, especially the partner customer number, to be honest. I think that's lower than a quarter. But here's some numbers that we got from our survey about how intensive most relationships are. In truth, I would put more like 65, 70% in the advisor category, and a quarter or something in the partner customer. But that's the danger of doing a survey. You get a number, but it's not necessarily a reliable number. So that's enough from the survey. Let's move on to our panel, because we do have an exciting panel and I don't want to use any more time. Why doesn't Dick Williams and Steve Shore please join us? So today we're gonna, in this panel, we're gonna talk not just about why and how employers partner with community colleges, but why in particular they partner with the non-credit continuing education division. And non-credit, what the heck is non-credit, right? Non-credit, the credit side of the college is the side where most students go, they show up, they expect to be there 2 or 3 years, they sign up for the whole 9 yards, a degree, a certificate, they take English, they take electives, they take whatever. The non-credit side is for students and employers that are just interested in skills. So it's for a company that just wants to train people to be IT specialists or welders or some other kind of skill, and they don't need English and math and electives and a 2-year degree. It's also for students who are in a hurry to get back to the labor market and don't have time for English and math and electives and a degree. They just want to learn a skill. So it's a very important, nimble, agile part of the college that doesn't always get the no pun intended, the credit it deserves. We do have a terrific panel, 2 business leaders that are really engaged in exciting community college partnerships. Richard Williams, I think is known as Dick Williams, is the CEO of RAM. And RAM is a manufacturer of precision plastic components for aerospace and defense. Who knew that aerospace and defense parts machines had plastic in them, but I guess they do. And Steve Shore is a vice president at Bank of America, focused on we'll hear more from him about IT. So I just want to, before I ask the first question, we're going to do this talk show style. I want to remind the audience to submit questions. We're really eager to hear from you and hear from your questions. Please submit them in the Q&A, using the Q&A function. But don't send them by chat. We won't get them if you send them by chat. Please use the Q&A function. So Dick and Steve, thank you so much for joining me. My first question really is, Why did you, when you discovered you had a skills need, when you discovered you had a talent shortage or a mismatch, why did you call a community college? And why in particular did you call the non-credit side of a community college? And I hope you'll answer with an example so that the audience can get a sense maybe of one of your best partnerships. What college do you partner with, and what occupation, and how long's the training, and what's the relationship like? But then come back to the why. Why did you pick a community college, and why the non-credit division? So Dick, maybe let's start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Tamara. In our particular case, we've had a long-term relationship with our local community college, Cisco Community College here in Cisco, Texas. But our engagement for years has been fairly low level. It's been a small endowment that we gave to the college, probably mostly out of a CSR, corporate social responsibility type.
Yep.
Environment and economic development. But most recently, we've increased that engagement. And I want to say one thing, that it's how to create that engagement relates to relationships. You have to build a relationship. You need to trust them. They need to trust you. We speak this different language, all that kind of stuff, but you build a relationship. So out of that relationship, we found two things: a need on our side that perhaps the college could support through the non-credit. And that need was a upskilling about half my existing workforce that I viewed as management or potential management, that I wanted to add some skill set in relationship to team building, teamwork, communication, leadership, and critical thinking.
Interesting.
Now, I offer a lot of that, but I felt like the college would bring a different perspective, perhaps a different voice. And so we organized a month-long, 2 hours a day for about half my team, about 26 people. We utilized the Skills Development Fund from Texas Workforce Commission. And ultimately, that was about $30,000 from the TWC and about $30,000 from RAM in labor time costs for these 26 people. And I can talk to the effectiveness perhaps with a later conversation.
Well, just on the why question, did it ever even occur to you to try any other kind of trainer besides community college, or was that just like the obvious no-brainer?
Yeah, we have a lot of contract training that happens in our plant, technical training specific to our operation, but we felt like this was theoretical training, and we felt like a professor from the college would do that best. And of course, we helped design that program a little bit. Primarily I went to the community college because I wanted someone to augment what I would otherwise give my team.
Yeah, that's great. And one last question before I go to Steve. So why the non-credit side? Like, you could have gone and said, oh, well, let's send them to college for 2 years. I mean, did that even occur to you? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, right. Take half my workforce out of my plant for 2 years would not be functionally, I wouldn't be capable of that. It was, I wanted to measure the effectiveness. So non-credit made good sense to us. It was 2 hours a day for a month for each of these people. And I was able to continue to operate through that process.
Yeah, that's great. Great story. Great classic story. Steve, tell us on your story. Again, why a community college? Why non-credit? But use an example to illustrate it for us.
So thank you for having me. The bank is a little bit different than Richard's organization. We are 200,000 people strong, and revenue stream. So we have certain flexibilities that a smaller company naturally just wouldn't have. And so from our standpoint, and Richard made, but there are a lot of similarities. A lot of this came out of, CSR activities. The bank recognize the importance of investing in, communities that might have lower educational levels. And the bank has basically come forth and said, we in the bank must represent our customer base. And so, we have customers who are not necessarily educated, who live paycheck to paycheck, and they deserve the same financial tools as an Elon Musk would at the extreme opposite end of the spectrum. And so the bank wants to be able to ensure that we can satisfy the needs of all of them. And so as part of wanting to represent their client base, we've realized several things. One is, banks are typically viewed, as a bunch of, middle to older people, in their suits and ties. It doesn't necessarily, you don't associate the bank, and our technology division is bigger than Google, Facebook, Apple.
And it's about recruiting. It's about recruiting workers.
Yeah. And so a lot of it has become, how do we get and attract that young workforce and make them think, hey, banking tech is as cool as Facebook tech.
So what's the program like? So
we actually partner with an organization called Year Up. And so they really are in the middle. And so we aren't directly working with the community colleges, but we're working with organizations that are working with the community colleges and saying, okay, we want to get people of a certain type into education, and we want them to have jobs. And so let's give them the best of both worlds.
And did you guys decide it should be at a community college, or did Year Up decide that?
I think it was Year Up. We are influencing it. So they, with Year Up, they picked what they believed were the correct courses to create a individual that would be marketable and hireable.
Yeah.
And many of us have come back and said, tweak it. We don't need people who understand how to troubleshoot Microsoft Windows or Macs. We need people who can, write a SQL database. And so we've helped them upgrade theirs. And then the community colleges are then able to execute on it.
And so are we training people we're not training people that already work for you? We're training people that enroll in Year Up, and then they finish the course, and then you guys hire them?
So it's a little of each. And so with Year Up, what they do is they put you through a year worth of community college education. Then you get an internship and apprenticeship, while at the same time, once a week, for 4 hours a week, you go, for us Wednesday afternoons, you go and take your courses back at the community college.
Got it. Okay, so I want to, time's fleeing. Well, go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Please.
Well, let me ask you another question, then I'll come back to Dick. So, you often hear about challenges of communication. You sort of referred to them, Dick. It's different cultures, different languages. I sometimes say employers are from Mars, educators are from Venus. So, Steve, tell me, have you run into that? And if so, what have you done about it? And what advice would you give to a colleague that's, in another company that's thinking of starting a relationship? How do we get over that Mars Venus thing? How do we build relationships?
That's the first time I've heard that analogy, and I think I'm going to steal it and use it because it's funny. My part-time job over the last 20 years is I teach in an MBA program, and so I live both sides of the world. And there's definitely that language discrepancy, and I see it. Well, so when oftentimes the students, the interns, the apprentices, when you give them an assignment, hey, I need you to do X, they immediately translate it into the homework assignment. Well, how many pages does that need to be? How many words does that need to be? And they're thinking in terms of the traditional, how we educate people versus, listen, I need you to put together an Excel file real fast, come up with the bottom numbers, figure it out, get it back to me in 15 minutes so I can figure out why my balance sheet isn't working. there is a chasm there, and teaching a lot of what we do is, so I have weekly meetings with my, typically 15 interns per half year. And I have weekly meetings and we go through little learning sessions of, okay, how did you handle this situation where your boss said X and you went off as a college student, not as an employee of a corporation? And so, yeah, it's very accurate. I think part of it is, again, since I work on both sides, the academic side needs to change as well. I mean, they've got to.
I think they have to change more. I mean,
Yeah.
the business world can't change. You're not going to start giving your employees homework assignments.
Right.
Dick, come in, join us. You talked, I mean, you gave away your secret actually at the beginning, relationships and trust, but tell us, how do we build those relationships and trust across this cultural divide?
Yeah, it takes time. You have to be willing as an industry leader or part within the industry. You actually have to spend the time, and that's it's a precious commodity for us in business. Further, I think your business has to be somewhat successful so that you have that time. So you got to be, good business practices. But connecting with a local college, work to touch at the instructor level, build a relationship at the instructor level, build a relationship at the student level, and have your students carry you into the classroom. Those relationships, I think, are exceptionally, incredibly important, because you won't make the next step to get administration behind this program. In my view, colleges or maybe even K-12 plus post-secondary, their customer is the state, because that's where they get their funding.
Yeah,
right? And so I think we get a little bit confused as to who the customer is.
Yeah.
And in my mind, the customer is industry and the customer is the student. So let's work at that level to begin with. And that seems to have some legs to it.
I mean, when it works best, what I've seen is that the college finally gets that the customers are industry and students, and they start to react in a totally different way. But how to get from here to there is not easy. Any advice for so you're a small to medium sized company, Dick, but like, what is if you're advising a colleague who's even smaller than you, who doesn't have the time, like is there any answer there?
Well, I mean, so look to your regional, local business alliances and associations that have part of their mission statement of connecting with education. Try to involve yourself in the school boards. I mean, these kinds of things. What we really want, what us businesses really want from K-12 and post-secondary, what we really want is we want curious, critical thinkers that can work on a team. Mm-hmm. Curiosity is one of the keys to discovery. And discovery is what we're looking for in business. Innovation is what makes us work. So what we want is we want a team of people that come to us with that, as opposed to what I say, and by the way, moderate this a little bit, but what I say is that education is this 18 years of re-education camp that tells you that capitalism is bad. Oh, but go work for one. Well, let's try to flip that model where we realize the values that we each bring with us. And we as businesses want that value. We want those people to come in and ask why. So that'd be my message.
Yeah, I would just like to say, I mean, I've been nodding the entire time. I think Richard is dead on. We use the 3 of the 4 words that we use constantly. One is intellectual curiosity. I refer them to as my kids. They're it's a heartwarming. I should call them young adults, but I'm like, you're my kids. You're important to me. And so I tell them intellectual curiosity. We hire for attitude, we'll train for aptitude. We have more training material than they could ever consume in a lifetime. But if you don't have that mental curiosity, the willingness to explore and ask questions, this ain't going to work. Teamwork. The empirical data is absolutely known. We are globally using more and more teams. You have to be able to do that. And the other is communications and a willingness to make mistakes. And I find that the last one to be really the most difficult, is getting them to understand it's good to make mistakes.
Sorry, my internet's a little challenged.
I want to just throw in, we use this term trial and error. You have to have the error, because that's what teaches you to take the next step forward. And in the students that we're seeing come to us, the population that comes to us is deathly afraid of error. So much so that they're frozen.
That's great. Wait. Time out.
Yes.
Time out, because we need to come back to the colleges, right? Your relationship with the colleges. It's important what you guys want. But I want to hear Steve's advice about what he's going to tell his, sorry, forgive me, really interesting conversation. But Steve, what would you tell a colleague, another company, the Citibank comes to you, or somebody that you friend in the community from a smaller company? What's the advice about how to build a good relationship?
It's funny, I think Richard and I are exactly alike here. I think building the relationship with the university, I wish as the bank we could do that more. We have some rules from HR. I totally agree that, especially if you're a smaller organization and have the ability to establish that one-on-one relationship with professors, the university, and the students, boy, that makes so much for a more meaningful impact. Definitely where possible, do that. And I think then, some of the other things we've been dabbling on is helping them to help us. The fact that, these folks are so terrified to make a mistake. Richard and I are not on a dime going to be able to say, okay, listen, day one at work, I know you've been afraid to fail for the last 18 years. Go for it. It's not going to happen. We need that built into the system where people learn, did anyone get murdered today? No, we can fix whatever you broke, and it's that people come and say, well, what if I break the system? You're not going to break the system. I guarantee you can't break the system. I want you to make mistakes, and then I want you to celebrate and tell people, so that from making the relationship with the university, I want them to help start instill that value, because that's the only way people will be successful in their careers. It's got to start in education.
So let's come back to, again, we're trying to think about how to get more companies to go in this direction. What can policy do? Can policy, so Dick, you talked about the Skills Development Fund. You had help from the state to fund a collaboration. What else can the state do? Maybe tell us a little bit about the Skills Development Fund and how that works and why that made it possible for you. And then love to hear any other ideas you have about how the government can help, kick this in the right direction as opposed to stand in the way.
I honestly, I think that the more that policy inside education can highlight lab work as opposed to teaching to the test work, and part of that lab work is outreach, some sort of incentive to outreach to regional, local industry to say, I want to place externships out there for educators. I want to place internships out for students. I want internships and externships to happen on a regular basis. That will build links between industry and education. And the community colleges are uniquely positioned for this. TSTC, for example, is a good example of this. The balance of the community colleges are not performing quite so well in that area. Of course, the TSTC financial incentive is about the success or monetary success long-term of the student, whereas the financial incentive inside community college is about seat time. So policy and structural initiatives there could change the path in our community colleges, I believe.
Yeah, that's great. So just to clarify for everyone, TSTC, Texas State Technical College graduates, the college gets funded on how much more the graduates make than the state minimum wage. So they have a strong incentive to get people good jobs as opposed to just get them graduated. But before I go to Steve, tell us a little bit about the Skills Development Fund and how that worked and how that helped. Oh, and then I have to go quickly to Steve. We're running out of time.
Was that a question for me?
That was a question. It was, but let's hold off because we're getting the hook. So we have 5 minutes left. So Steve, do you have thoughts about policy?
Yeah, policy could absolutely make an impact. And I think, that's where corporations, both their own policy and the ability to influence policy from local or, board of directors, businesses, things like that, policymakers. I mean, the bank, clearly we do a lot of policy influencing in Washington and other countries. But it trickles down to, I think, state and local levels, people getting involved with boards and, pushing ideas that say, hey, you can help us help you by doing these things. And then also the flip side is, from the bank standpoint, we have certain diversity and inclusion goals. And from our own internal policy, some of that extends into, are we hiring young enough, if you will? Are we hiring those who may not have the 4-year education and, the perfect background and our own internal metrics, policy driven around.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What are we doing to?
Yeah, Dick's chafing to get in here.
I am. I'm jumping in. I just want to say on the Skills Development Fund, in my mind, it was baked. We would have likely done this training ourselves anyway. But because skills development was there, it was an opportunity to support the local college and a bait to make that move within the local college.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The government doesn't have to pay for it all. They just have to give enough of a little bit of a sweetener so that business comes in and pays for the rest. I mean, in your case, it was half and half. Okay, you get a lightning round. A 30-second, what's your recommend? And we'll start with Steve and then we'll end with you, Dick. What's your 30-second recommendation you haven't given to a colleague that, hey, I'm running tomorrow's widgets. I need to train people. What the heck do I do? What's your quick advice, Steve?
Consider those whom you never have considered. Consider investing the time in them because they will repay it back. They really appreciate you taking the time to make a difference in their life, and they want to prove to you that they are worthy of you spending time with them. That's
great. Untapped talent pools. Great. Dick.
Yeah, following Steve's point that we have a different workforce today than perhaps those of us that are in our 60s or 70s dealt with some years ago. That workforce wants actually the same things that we have always wanted but could never get, and that is work-life balance and to see how they can connect with value. And so my encouragement to local businesses is build relationships with education. You'll give them value and they will give you value. When we give the value of the understanding of what we really want and need, it'll come back to you.
That's great. You guys are great. This is a really interesting conversation. So thank you. And I'm not sure how the mechanics work, but we'll leave the stage and give it to the next panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara.
Thanks, Tamar. I'm Jane Oates with Working Nation, one of the proud partners of BLAST. And this transition is going to be, remember, you just listened to great conversation about non-credit programs. Our panel is going to bring to light the very interesting, but I think slightly more challenging world of for-credit programs for especially for advanced middle skill jobs. And the reason I say more challenging is this is a place where community colleges have to change the way they think. In non-credit courses, they can build new, but now they have to go through adjusting and adapting their academic program in these credit-bearing courses. So I'm going to bring 3 real business experts on. I'll ask them to join me. First, I have Gretchen Sawchuk, who's the Director of Human Resources and Communications for BASF in Freeport. And for those of you who don't know, BASF is a renowned and well-respected petrochemical company and manufacturer. I'm going to ask Mark Sherry to join us. And Mark is the Director of Human Resources at Baylor Scott & White, a large healthcare system in Dallas, Austin, and I think in Temple as well. So thank you, Mark, for joining us, and Gretchen. And then I'm going to ask Michelle Glaze to join us. And Michelle is the Director of Communication and Community Affairs at Samsung. Samsung in Austin, they are a big semiconductor manufacturer, and everybody's happy to have them in their community. So welcome to all 3 of you. Reminding the audience, please ask your questions. The whole idea of BLAST is to get your questions answered by people that we consider experts in Texas. So use this opportunity to get your questions answered. Believe me, I have no shortage of them, much to the chagrin of my panel members. But Gretchen, I want to start with you for a very interesting reason, because you at BASF use both the non-credit and credit side of your local community colleges. So I thought you could begin, it would be a nice segue to say, what's the difference? You know, why do you go to them for some non-credit stuff, and for other things, for your business needs, go to the credit side of the house? So if you would, please.
Yeah, sure. We use the college mostly for our operations training, getting operators trained, and we get operators through a couple different streams. One, we hire those with what we call a PTech, production technician degree, and that would be on the credited side. So they go to the college, they complete this 2-year program, and then they come out with their degree and we hire them. But we also hire people that have worked as contingent workers or craft workers in our plants. So they're familiar with chemical plants, but they've never been a chemical operator. Perhaps they've been, you know, a welder or a millwright or something like that. And then we also have a strong vet recruiting program. So again, we're looking for people that can transition into an operator position and maybe have a little bit of experience with working with chemicals or in a manufacturing process through their Army training, but not quite a chemical plant. So we use the non-credit side to train those to the same level as the PTechs that we get from the credit side.
Oh, that's great. And maybe we could continue the conversation, Mark and Michelle, talking a little bit about your focus. Like, what do you use your community college for on that credit side of the house? Jump ball, Mark, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we're very similar to Gretchen, just again, a different industry. From a standpoint, we started very small with our community college and looked at non-credit. So when we look at our ecosystem of what we need, particularly in healthcare, all the way from our degreed programs in nursing, to going back just to the foundation of the number of jobs that we have at the entry level or the middle skill development side. And that's where we began our intense partnership with Austin Community College of how rapidly can we, in a difficult talent shortage through COVID, through a number of different factors that were impacting our staffing, rapidly deploy new talent into the healthcare sector. And this is where our partnership started, was that opportunity to look at these non-credited programs, get the individuals in our door, expose them to a healthcare career, and then leverage that into degreed programs of upskilling them into further skills in needs as our opportunities grew.
Interesting. Michelle, how about your experience?
Yeah, so Thanks for having me today. And I really learned a lot in the previous panel as well. So at Samsung Austin Semiconductor, we've been partnering with Austin Community College for nearly 2 decades. And we have recently started engaging with TSTC as well. And as we move forward with our expansion in Taylor, we will be working with Temple College, the community college assigned to the Taylor area. And we do both the non-skilled training and skilled training. So we do both sides of the fence. We're very excited that we have a fully stackable manufacturing technician pathway. So we have a certified production technician program that trains for entry-level hires. We have a corporate college where we have customized training and upskilling opportunities for our employees. We partner with them at ACC on a high school academy where juniors and seniors in high school are earning a year of college credit and understanding about advanced manufacturing, because advanced manufacturing by most young people's standards is not cool. So we're trying to help them understand it's cool and you can have a great career, because at Samsung, we believe we can hire GEDs to PhDs. And so Austin Community College and TSTC and Temple College are really going to help us more on that technician level. And then we do have what we call a Fab Apprentice program, who are apprentices who are working on taking classes towards an associate degree. And then as part of this, we also have a Samsung Scholars program. So, one of the things that why I'm here on the call and not my HR team is Samsung has a robust relationship with ACC. Particularly, we look at it from a corporate social responsibility perspective, to an upskilling our current employees, to finding new employees and high school students to come work here. And then, about goodwill for the community, because the Certified Production Technician Program is not something that just ACC does. It was a partnership with Workforce Solutions that other nonprofits and actually other semiconductor companies are using as well.
I love the articulation between what you're doing in CSR, corporate social responsibility, and what you're doing in HR, which is hiring. That's so missing in so many companies across the nation. That's a terrific bridge. So I want to really dig a little into the nuts and bolts of this. So let's talk very specifically, I love Richard Rhodes. You both mentioned Austin Community College. He's a leader among leaders, right? But how did you begin, or how did your company begin the relationship with the community college? Who did you go to? Who was, the title? You don't need to name a name, because if the people on our session with us today really want to start a relationship, how did you start? Maybe they can learn from you. And this is a question for everybody. Okay, Gretchen, you have to start then.
I'll start, but it's a difficult question for me to answer, because we've had that relationship probably 30 plus years. Wow. So, and I've not been around for 30 plus years, but I've seen it evolve. I was here in 1998, and it's grown leaps and bounds since then. And we've worked with different people throughout those years. So, the history that I know of is we kind of started with approaching somebody to use the space and have our own trainer come in and train people from the outside. And then we gradually brought in people at the college. As the college grew, our program grew, because Lake Jackson's pretty small, and the college started off small. Today it's a college. It's not even a community college now, it's a college. Wow. So we really kind of grown with it. And I'd like to think that we were a part of that. But so yeah, we kind of, I don't want to say snuck our way in, but they needed they needed some income. We needed some space, so we paid them to get space, and now they have a person. We have our own what we call a pet plant. It's a pilot plant where operators can go out hands-on and kind of, because the last panel said we encourage mistakes. We do encourage mistakes, but not here in the plant, because things can go really wrong. So, but the pet plant is a safe place where they can have an oops and, nothing really happens. And now we use their grant writing program. They find us some money, to kind of offset the cost of training now. So that's how our relationship has kind of grown with them, over 30 some years.
Yeah, I think mine continues to grow with the community college. I think you mentioned some key people there, Dr. Rhodes and and Garrett Groves for ACC have been tremendous in our relationship. But it starts out as a community. Mine started out with the Austin Chamber of Commerce. It's opening the doors to supporting the community, and then creating entry points and networking and building those relationships, because we're all trying to solve the same problem in our communities, whether it be manufacturing or healthcare. It's identifying what those needs are through some of the data that you get through your workforce partners, and then targeting that information and strategically partnering with the community college for us made the most sense. So once those doors were opened, whether it's through advisory boards, job fairs, there's just multiple paths that we continue to reach out to and partner with our community members to be able to solve what we felt was a continuously growing need here in Austin.
And I agree with Gretchen and Mark. So yeah, our relationship started with ACC 20 years ago to create the corporate college. And so at that time, it was managed through our technical training team and some professors and academic chairs. But as we evolved the need to create a pipeline for technicians, the department chair of advanced manufacturing, Laura Marmolejo from ACC, is who we really developed a lot of the pathways for the Certified Production Technician program, the Manufacturing Academy. But the broader relationship really come in direct relationship with our VP of Strategic Partnerships, Garrett Groves. So Samsung's now looking at things at a much larger picture of everything across the company. And now we're being able to do that with ACC, very much like what Mark is doing, as we're looking at new points. ACC is exploring a 4-year engineering degree based upon some of the relationships they currently have today.
Yeah, these are really interesting ways, and I hope people are taking notes on this, because there's not one path to create that relationship. I want to go back a little bit. I think, Gretchen, you mentioned, but I want everybody to weigh in on this. There's such misperceptions about advanced manufacturing. Both Michelle and Gretchen, you both live with that. And I think, Mark, you would agree that there's limited perceptions on the opportunities in healthcare. People think of just the patient focused, the patient facing ones. The first session that we did with BLAST, we had Christy Ponce from Temple College, and she talked to us very specifically about work they were doing in the high schools. They're doing work all across the board, and I know some of you are familiar with them. Love you to talk about them as well. But what about challenging those misperceptions, getting people to see all aspects of your business early on so they can prepare? What do you think about that?
Well, I'll jump in. I completely understand. At Samsung, we think one of the best ways for a high school student to understand is to actually see the facility, and so or speak to someone who works in the facility. So ACC does partner with several of the school districts in the area to have their students or folks from Samsung go and talk. We have local relationship with the school districts. We work with the chambers. We also work with the Austin Regional Manufacturing Association and Workforce Solutions. So it is a community approach to understanding, but they need to see it, feel it, and understand it, the student themselves, but also influence what I call student adjacent influencers, the guidance counselor, the teachers, the mom and dad, the church youth league, letting them all understand that there is a good career available for their students. And a lot of that is just helping them, learn more about the company and learn more about the skills that are needed and the career that can be created.
That's great. Gretchen, what do you think? What do you think about getting to them early? I think you're the one who brought up high school.
Yeah, we do a lot of similar things. We even try to do middle school. Like we just participated in a middle school career day. I mean, in this area, people grow up surrounded by chemical plants. So the whole chemical plant experience isn't foreign to them. But what we're finding is, and I see this, I have a teenager too, and they like the coding and the sexy technology, and chemical plants, they don't automatically scream high tech, right? But it is like we have drone pilots, we have AI, we have these things, but you have to get that message out there, or the perception is we just do the same thing every day, and I don't think so. We do try to have career days, we do try to bring them in, we do try to have technicians go out to the high schools and talk about what is a day in the life of an operator really like. It's no 2 days are the same. Hopefully your day's not too exciting, but no 2 days are the same. You do inside, you do outside, you have to run what we call the board, the control panel. We have to keep up with technology. So, it can still be exciting, maybe not as exciting as, your YouTube career future, or
Which
or-
pays nothing.
right. This is conversations I have at night now, or you want to, or if you don't want to go to a 4-year college too, it's these jobs, you can make 6 figures a year doing these things. It's hard work, but it's possible. And there's not a lot of opportunities out there with a 2-year degree that you can make that kind of money.
Yeah, Jane, I want to comment on, I started out actually in the tech industry before switching over to healthcare, and I think they're so much further ahead in terms of this growth rate. Our challenge was to catch up. And my aha moment was, as we do summer internships or education programs for teachers in the middle school and high school areas, we surveyed them. What's the most interesting job that you're talking to your students about? And we heard nurses and physicians. That's only 2 of over 2,000 jobs we have within the healthcare space. And I think that was an important aha moment for us to say, there are many different entry points for students to get into healthcare. And once they get in, they can progress through that through a community college that are tuition free, and they come out debt free. And that was an important piece that we want to build into our career path and our succession. Is you don't have to go to a 4-year school to become a nurse or a physician. Not at the original start. If that's not an opportunity for you based on life circumstances, let's go the community college route. Let's do a rapid certification. Let's get you into healthcare. Let's expose you to many different facets of healthcare beyond just those 2 job codes, and see what we can stick to and develop you in your career and help pay for that. And I think that was the most important thing for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are really unaware of the evolution of healthcare. The incredibly interesting jobs that exist behind the heroes, that are patient facing. So I think could we take that national, please? Because I think too many, both young people and career changers, don't understand that. But I want to go back for a second. All of you have had a long relationship, and you have all those things that we heard about on the first panel: trust, you have partners. I want to ask you very honestly about the business case for this. This isn't a feel-good thing. You wouldn't stick around for 10, 20, Gretchen, in your case, 30 plus years, if this was just a feel-good thing. Talk a little bit about how this helps you as a business attract, retain, diversify, maybe even, look at really ways that you get talent that you wouldn't have gotten before if you hadn't had this partnership. Reduce your days to fill a position.
I would love to go first because I think this is the core of what we're trying to do in this middle school offering that we're putting forth. It's providing an opportunity for employees that at some point for us in their life, career or life has hit them straight in the face, and they've had to unfortunately abandon a career, abandon a degree that they wanted to start. They took on a family, they took on different responsibilities, or even today, they're just not able to afford to go back to school. We believe, again, that these programs with the community college are providing an opportunity for us to give these individuals a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance to go back and get a degree or to finish up an education or leverage some of the education they've already had into a career that they can earn and learn. And that's an important piece for us, is that earn and learn segment. The most important piece with the community college is we've challenged the status quo of the curriculum, which used to be an 18-month curriculum potentially and too long for people to take. It just didn't have the time to do it, to condense it to 8 to 9 weeks. And based on this partnership, we're then able to provide the benefits and the education for these individuals to go back to school without missing a beat, without taking time off, without losing money, without losing benefits, and to achieve something that they always wanted to do. And I think that's been the most successful thing that we see. The end result, the ROI, I think, of what you're asking for is retention and loyalty. We've demonstrated that, and we see that from the employees that are currently completing these programs, a much higher retention rate. And actually, we see them then moving into other careers that we're in desperate need for in healthcare.
That's great. Gretchen, Michelle, are you seeing kind of the same thing, or do you have different aspects of that ROI?
I mean, I think for us, the business case is a little different. Of course, we do have all those buttons that we like to, or those boxes we like to check, but our technician training program used to be 5 years, and we would take somebody with no experience, and in 5 years, they would become what we call a senior production technician. It's now 3 years. And we couldn't do that. I mean, we saved 2 years. We could not do that if they wouldn't get that head start at the college. But at college also gave us the flexibility to take somebody, like I mentioned before, who has a little bit of experience in the chemical industry, but not enough, to fast track them at 6 to 12 weeks, where we can also put them in a 3-year training program and they can graduate and become, production technicians for us. And for us, when we say production technician senior, that means they can do all the jobs, inside jobs, outside jobs, and run the board. So they're very advanced, even compared to some of our peers in the area. And we couldn't do that without the college's involvement and taking on some of that training. And that, of course, has been a 30-year transition, but we're there. But we also defray the cost with some of our other chemical plants in the area, because we're all looking for the same types of people, right? So we're not solely bearing the cost of building a pet plant or, providing equipment to the college.
That
Also with
collaboration is great.
Yeah, and our diversity goals, we would like to have more female operators. It's not traditionally a female intensive role. And we speak to the college about that with their recruiting. So they help build the pipeline for us, to hire. And we've kind of dovetailed that into some apprenticeship programs or female internship programs that we have here at the college. So, I mean, they really have truly been a partner for us. One thing that we don't talk about a lot, the college is in the community, right? So all of our neighbors have children, or they go or they teach there. So while we would like to be very altruistic and give money to the college and support the college, we also get that community goodwill out of that as well, which is very important to us.
And every business, right? Every business wants the community to feel that they're a good corporate partner. I'm sorry, Michelle, please.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I agree with everything Mark and Gretchen have said, but I think part of the business case comes down to economics. So first of all, Samsung's been able to get really great employees upskilled so that they can personally grow and thrive. As Gretchen said, a community college represents the community. So we've also been able to help students who may not have an economic advantage get an economic advantage. Whether you've got a GED or partnering, through the CPT program and with the school districts, they're being given an opportunity to get a job that they may not have had before. So that means they're going to get to grow and thrive. The community college is a partner with the chambers, Workforce Solutions, with other business leaders. And so as a community, we need to make sure that we keep our citizens employed. And so these are all great things. Now, I will say for ACC, I've worked with other communities before. They have been very open to rethinking their models and listening to business input. With Mark over at Baylor Scott & White, but also the other healthcare institutions, to the hospitality industry, to the semiconductor industry, they've been able to rethink things. And so the last 3 years, we have really built out stackable programs and looked at it in different ways. And that's because the community as a whole has been having part of this conversation.
Well, I want Gretchen and Mark, if you don't mind, to weigh in a little bit on that concept. I mean, you're all three of you are incredibly successful businesses. Thank God for that, right? I mean, and thank you for all your efforts to do that. But one of the language problems that I think was brought up on the last panel was that pace of change. I mean, the language that colleges don't change very quickly. They don't pivot as quickly as businesses. How have you been able, Gretchen and Mark, I think Michelle just described it really well. How have you been able to work with your colleges together so that you can deal with your changing business needs and they can adapt their curriculum more quickly?
I can go first, I guess. I mean, we have a very strong relationship with our college because it's been so long, and we're actually having this conversation right now because I get feedback from some of our production managers. They're saying, you know, we used to get people who had strong mechanical aptitude, and now what we're finding is we have to kind of go more back to basics. And when we kind of think about this, and you know, bounce some ideas off with our community college partners, it's like, well, because children today are growing up and they're not actually doing things. There's no shop class. There's, you know, they're mostly doing things on the computer. So we have to adjust to that. So I'd like to see that adjustment in the curriculum, maybe where we have to take a step back and do more of the hands-on stuff that the primary schools now are not doing so much. But and that change happens pretty quickly, right? So with a strong partnership with your community college, you can make those changes pretty quickly. I mean, they seem like a small thing, but they make a huge impact.
Mark, are you finding the same things or something different?
You know, I think we touched upon, and Gretchen did, the curriculum and an important piece, and I shared in the earlier comment. You know, we took a standard 18-month curriculum and condensed it into 9 weeks.
Wow.
I think that was an important piece for us, and we've seen tremendous success with that. But I think one of our biggest challenges, and it's no need in Austin, is transportation and how to get from one place to the next as large as we're growing. So the community college has been tremendous in looking at alternatives instead of looking at one campus, looking at maybe multiple campuses of where we have the training. Looking at, do we have the trainings on site, which is much easier for potential students to gain that curriculum knowledge. And then we're exploring virtual and how much of this training can we start doing virtually. And that will be an important piece for us as we grow larger. And it's much more difficult for individuals, particularly at the low wage side, to get to a location at a certain time, a certain schedule. How flexible can we be in terms of our class offerings and do as many as we can, maybe virtually? And I think that'll be the next evolution in some of the work that we're doing.
Oh, that's great. I want to dig a little. I know we skimmed on it on diversity. I mean, Texas is such a beautifully diverse state, you know, and the first thing is gender. How do we get more women into engineering tech programs? But quite frankly, how do we get more men into nursing? You know, so everybody deals with diversity differently, and certainly language diversity, ethnic diversity, racial diversity. What could we spend a minute or two? What are the specific ways that I know the community college is a diverse institution typically, but how are you making sure that rich diversity in the community colleges is coming into your track, taking your associate degrees? Any tips for people that may be listening?
You know, I think for me, and you mentioned it, you know, my industry is 85% female. It's a little bit different shift. But I think for us, we're really targeting those individuals. I would love to say that we're taking them out of poverty and giving them an opportunity. That's a segment for us. It's very important, is a low wage skill. And the easiest way for us is to make it affordable to everybody. And that's through partnerships. And we have been successful to partner with ACC on apprenticeships. And we've taken that opportunity to federally register our apprenticeships in the healthcare space. And that's created that opportunity for anybody at any wage, any income level to be able to get into this program. So we're trying to eliminate as many barriers as we can. I talked about transportation as one earlier, and then affordability is the other one. And I think both of those two are critical in terms of making sure that everybody has the equal access to get into these programs and upskill and come into a healthcare career.
Great. Gretchen, Michelle?
So I will say, oh, go ahead, Gretchen.
No, go ahead.
So yes, we're very excited that ACC itself is a Hispanic serving institution and a minority serving institution. So that helps. But I think Mark hit on a key point, affordability. That is a key thing. So part of what we have done is we've created a scholarship program, because unfortunately there are many seniors in high schools or fresh out of high schools who need to work 40 hours a week to be able to, help take care of the family, or take care of themselves. And so by paying for college and some of the other incidentals associated with college, they've been able to dedicate themselves to fully being embraced in the learning experience. So that is one way. We're still working on trying to figure out how to get more women in advanced manufacturing. And I think Gretchen hit it earlier. Getting in at the younger age with middle school students, I think, is one of the key things that we've been talking to ACC about how to do more of that.
Great. Gretchen?
Yeah, I would say we do a couple things as well. We do for getting more females in, we try to get their middle school and high school and do some myth busting around what manufacturing really is and what the requirements are, and that maybe it isn't as manual as you think that it is. Like, we have a brand new plant that's hardly any manual work at all, right? And it's not all outside in the middle of summer in Texas, which is not desirable for anybody, right? Right. And then we work with the colleges also to kind of say, what programs do you have in place to attract diverse candidates, and what are you doing to attract females specifically? And what we find, most of our females are career changers, not straight out of high school, because I think, they go more traditional routes out of high school, and then they realize they can make a lot more money going into manufacturing. So do you have flexible classes where they can still work and still take care of their families and, attend these production technician programs?
That's great. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want to give you a chance to end on the same question Tamar ended on. Are there policy changes that would make life easier for you? Are there policy changes? Are there policies right now that are real challenges for you, that you can't do what you want because of certain policies, state, federal, local, whatever you want to talk about? Anything standing in your way?
I think there are two, and we talk about all three of us affordability, and I think as big as the state of Texas is, again, there's some limitations in terms of funding of how it can be stretched across the state. That's probably one of them. I'm working probably with a handful of community colleges. They all have different funding paths. So that is labor intensive for us to manage each one of those locations. The other one for us is the non-credited articulation, or the transfer to a degree credited program, is also very helpful. When we have individuals that are receiving non-credit programs and are working in our healthcare industry, being able to have some of that accounted for or credited towards a degree program may be helpful to get us through that much quicker. So I think that's an opportunity for us also to take a look at.
Great. Michelle, Gretchen?
We just recently discovered there's quite a bit of grant money out there in the state of Texas, depending on how you define an apprentice in your program. I would like to see that be more transparent and less, I want to say tricky, because you have to define it in a certain way and you have to promise certain things. So it makes it a little harder to take a risk on somebody. Like, for instance, we wanted to bring female apprentices in as contractors and have them work a little bit and go to school a little bit, but then that disqualified us for certain money that was on the table because they weren't direct hires. But you don't want to take a chance on somebody with zero experience and promise a direct hire in 2 years. So we passed on that one, but we did find other money to offset that. And it's not really the money so much, but those kind of programs for a large company, not a big deal, but for a smaller or mid-sized company, that's a big incentive, to make it as easy. The money's there, make it easy to make it more accessible.
I agree with both Gretchen and Mark on affordability, making things more accessible. And this really is not a policy thing, but I think helping those officials who define those grant programs really understand the types of people who are applying for them and the needs that they have, and then the types of jobs. So let's get more of the elected officials and policymakers to take tours of our facilities, to understand the jobs, because we can't wait 3 more years or 5 more years. The semiconductor industry needs technicians today and tomorrow and 3 years down the road. So the nursing, we need nurses now. And I'm sure Gretchen needs her folks now. So a sense of urgency is something I always encourage in policymaking.
Well, I think that's great advice. Boy, I'll tell you what, we could have talked for a day. I have learned so much. You're doing such great work. Thank you for what you're doing, first of all, and keep it up. But I think it was such a great way to look at 3 very different industries, how they're managing partnerships. And I think you've given our attendees and the people who will learn from this so much information. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for participating. And thank you for hoping to continue to participate in BLAST. We're going to do great things with this consortium led by the Chamber. And to those attending, I would remind you that this was just the second in a 6-part series. On May 3rd, we'll have Harrison Keller, who is the unbelievably innovative head of higher education for the state of Texas for the 4-year colleges. He's going to join us. Hope you come with lots of questions. And in the interim, if you've joined us and you're not currently a member of BLAST, I can lean on my good friend, Peter Beard. Contact him at the Greater Houston Partnership or Elizabeth McLean at the Dallas Chamber or Jessica Atras at TAB, but get involved. Texas is too important, not only to yourselves, but to all of us and the rest of the country. We depend on you. So get involved. Hope to see you on future things. Gretchen, Michelle, Mark, I look forward to many opportunities to learn more from you in the future. And again, thank you. Thanks for attending today. Bye-bye.
Thanks.